Alright guys, thanks for tuning in. We're at the final part of my E30 brake refresh. Obviously we're working on the rear brakes today. So that'll be rear brakes with the pads, rotors, and calipers. And then that should go fairly easy. I think the trickiest part with the rears will be getting the parking brakes installed with just the springs. It's always kind of tricky. And then adjusting those is going to be another big step. So I think most of the time will be spent on that, but the rest of the rear brakes should go together pretty well. If you've seen my last couple brake videos, you'll also know that I've been running new hard lines in the engine bay compartment as well as the line to the back. So those will go in new in the rear as well. Probably won't show too much of that yet, just because I have to still route and rerun those lines. But they'll be coming in new as well with the part that I've mentioned already. So yeah, with that, let's dig into it.
You know, I originally used the cart to hold the tools that I'm currently working on, but now it seems to just have everything stuffed in the drawer. Of course, our first step is going to be dousing down the brakes with our PB blaster. There's no shortage of rusty bits back here. Again, these E30 brakes are a fairly easy system. There's going to be two bolts that are holding the caliper bracket onto the car, as well as two more slide pins that are going to hold the caliper to the bracket. Going to undo the soft to hard brake line. I actually had to cut it a little bit just because I couldn't get the nut loose. The anti-rattle clip pops off and goes all the way to the garage door. A little bit of prying will pop our caliper off, and then I can work on those larger caliper bracket bolts on the back. Using the E30 spark plug tube, I think, has a little bit more leverage to break these loose. Cracks me up how small the rear calipers look on the E30. Pretty quick progress to get to this point. Out of the 4 rotor retaining screws that I have on this car, only one of them, it was the rear passenger side, only one of them came off easily. Everything else kind of had to get drilled out, and I just made a mess. Going to go in here and start popping all of the pieces out to get the parking brake shoes out of the way. The retaining pins just push in, twist 90 degrees, and then they pop out nice and easy. I was just using needle nose pliers to get some leverage in there to push them in before I had to twist. And then again, using my pliers just to pull the springs and let everything get loose. So before I go and pull the cable out of the car, I have to come up into the cabin and get this nut off. And with it loose up front, I can pull it out a little bit further and just push this retaining pin out. The parking brake cable is just pushed into the back of the dust shield, and then there's a tube through the body where it connects to go into the cab. Now this part was definitely seized in there pretty good. A little detour for some other rusty bits to the fueling system. To get the cable out, I really just kind of grabbed onto it with some pliers and then just kept trying to twist it. And eventually with enough back and forth twisting action, I was able to break it loose and then wiggle it out. And then to get the new cable in, I started at the back and then put the cab side through the tube and then fed the other bit back through the dust shield. And there we go, getting it adjusted in the cabin. Here's just a comparison of the old and the new parking brake bits. I use this to mock up how it should go back into the car. Also, if you want to take this one step further, I would probably recommend getting a new one of these backing plates. Where my pins go through, it was a little rusted. So on the right-hand pin, it was a lot more difficult to get it perfectly into place. But I think in order to change out this backing plate, you might also have to pop the hub off, which I wasn't really in the mood to do. Nor did I realize that I should probably replace these while I was back here. Maybe next time. Okay, so once we have both of our retaining clips in there, I put the spacer on the top and then started getting the springs in. There's really no trick to this. You just get one side hooked in and then try to grab the other side with your pliers and stretch it over. If you need to, I think using a flathead screwdriver can also hold it into place while you pull on the other side. While this did take me a while to put together, it does go fairly smooth and there's really not too much complexity to it. And there we have it. Parts are in and ready to be adjusted. And with that in the right place, it's time to start installing the rest of the brakes. So I'm going to slap the new rotor on, get it lined up right, and then we can move on to the caliper and bracket. With the bracket in place, I'm going to start working on getting the caliper and pads in. For the rears, the pad on the piston side of the caliper has an extra clamp in it, so I just went and set that into the caliper, and then I'll get that into place and then just slightly wiggle it out enough to get the, the outside pad on. Luckily, there's hooks on everything, so there's really only one way that they'll go on. No need to worry about putting it in the wrong direction. If you're reusing your calipers, you may have to compress the piston in to make up for the difference of the thickness of your new pads. For me, I struggled a little bit not realizing that the slide pins on the back of the caliper weren't backed out far enough to allow the caliper and pads to fit on nicely. So once I move those out of the way a little bit more, everything will just fall into place. If your hard lines are already in place, don't forget to get that connected as well. I'm going to have to wait a little bit until I get that hard line in. Final step will be getting the anti-rattle clip in. I have no idea how this works to stop any rattling from happening, but we're just going to have to get the two little bits kind of in the holes of the caliper, and then the winglets push against the bracket. So just find a way to bend it and push it into place. And once it's in there, it is not going anywhere.
All right, there we have it. The rear brakes and parking brake hardware, all that is installed and ready to go. Like I said, the parking brake is the more tricky part of the rear brakes. Getting the cable out of the tube in the body was a struggle, and then my backing plate was a little rusted out, so the parking brake kind of like push lock pins. At first it was starting to tear through the backing plates. So if I were to do it again, I would probably recommend grabbing the backing plates. It looks like they're only $30, but I think in order to put those on, you'll also have to take the hubs off, so that could be another difficulty. All in, I'm excited to have all of the brakes refreshed on my E30. Now just some fine tuning and we'll be back on the road. Thanks for watching.